Hey guys, and welcome back for today's video where I have a few polls here nationally and then also a few early primary state results just to kind of paint a picture of where we're currently at before heading into tonight's debate. This is going to be the fourth round of the 2020 Democratic primary debate, and we can kind of see where the numbers are right now, and then in the weeks to come, if the numbers shift around, maybe we can point to, well, this was a catalyst for that in the debates, maybe positive or negative moments for these different candidates. So this week's morning consult numbers, not much in the way of change. Certainly, it's almost the exact same numbers that we had last week. So Joe Biden in first place at 32% of support, followed by Elizabeth Warren at 21% and Bernie Sanders at 19%. And then all the other candidates are at the mid to lower single digits. And in poll by poll, especially nationally, it's looking like a three-way race between Biden, Warren, and Sanders, where they're all in general within striking distance of each other, where Warren and Biden have separated themselves a little bit more so from Bernie Sanders, but in terms of if you're just looking at a Biden-Warren race, the only other candidate that really looks like they have a chance to challenge at this point in time does appear to be Senator Sanders. And I definitely don't want to count out Bernie Sanders, given he has the most grassroots network of support. He has the most donors. And those are real people, real volunteers that can knock on doors, phone bank, things such as that can potentially help him in these primary and especially caucus results. And we'll see if that is the case or not once we get into the actual voting. But these are the morning consult numbers. So now I want to go over and take a look at this week's Quinnipiac poll. And it shows similar numbers for Warren and Biden, but different numbers for Sanders than what we got in last week's Quinnipiac result. And you can get this in poll-by-poll numbers where you can get shifting around like this. I'm a little surprised to see Sanders take this kind of step back in just a week's period of time, but we'll still continue to keep our eye on what Quinnipiac is saying, where Warren in first place at 30% of support, followed by Biden at 27%. And this is where I was surprised, where you have Sanders at just 11% support. When you compare that to last week's Quinnipiac result, where Warren was at 29, Biden was at 26, so very similar numbers, but then Sanders was at 16%, so a 5-point difference in just 1 week. A little bit skeptical about that one. And in terms of when we take a look at the average of the national polls, Bernie Sanders tends to be closer to around that 16% number than that 11% number, so that's also something to keep in mind. Now moving on to the next poll that we have here. This one is from YouGov, and it paints a little bit of a different picture nationally, where it has Elizabeth Warren in first place at 28%, followed by Bernie Sanders in second place at 21%, and Joe Biden falling back to third place in this one at 18.4 percentage points, and then all of the other candidates, again, in the lower to mid single digits range. All right, now I just want to wrap up this video with 3 state-specific results. They're all from CBS YouGov, and we're going to start here with Iowa, which shows an extremely competitive race at the top between Biden, Warren, and Sanders, who are all well within the margin of error, clearly, of each other, where Biden and Warren at 22%, Bernie Sanders at 21%. And I feel like Sanders has the opportunity to potentially outperform in a state like Iowa because it is a caucus. And when we look back at 2016, Sanders tended to do quite a bit better in caucus states than in primaries, because caucuses, you tend to get lower turnout and it's more politically active members of the party. And that tends to be the portion of the party that is supportive of somebody like a Bernie Sanders. So we'll see right out of the gate if this kind of hypothesis continues to play for Sanders or if we're getting different results than that. But the polling numbers are indicating a very competitive race at the top, and then also kind of an outlier in terms of, if we take a look at the national polls and then compare it to Iowa, the big difference here is, of course, Pete Buttigieg. He's putting in a ton of work and effort into this first state. You can see he's there at 14%. It's kind of his backyard. He's the mayor of South Bend, Indiana, just a couple of states over, and basically, for Pete Buttigieg to go on and win this nomination, he has to do extremely well in these whiter Midwestern states, and we'll see if he's able to do that in Iowa. And I'd say if Buttigieg doesn't get first or second place in Iowa, his candidacy probably has almost no chance, because, again, this is one of his most important states, and if he's not doing well in a state like Iowa, then it means that he's probably not going to do well in states when you get outside of the Midwest. All right, moving over to another very important state, that is New Hampshire. And this is right in the backyard of Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. Of course, Sanders, the senator from the neighboring state of Vermont, and he also did extremely well in this state back in the 2016 primary in his head-to-head matchup against Hillary Clinton, but also the neighboring state of Massachusetts, where Elizabeth Warren is the senator, and you'd expect both Warren and Sanders to do pretty well in a state like New Hampshire. We see Warren in this poll doing quite well, leading the pack at 32% of support, followed by Biden at 24%, and then in third place, Bernie Sanders at 17%. Now, unfortunately, CBS and YouGov didn't do a Nevada poll for these early states in this round of the polls that they did, and what we've generally been seeing in Nevada is where Sanders is showing a bit more strength in contrast to Biden and Warren than what their national numbers indicate, and that would be the third state in line that we would go to, and then the fourth state would be an area where Joe Biden is expected to do very well, and that is indicative of what the polls are saying. Joe Biden leading the pack here in South Carolina at 43%. Given his ties to Barack Obama and the large African-American voter turnout in the Southeast, a state like South Carolina, you'd expect Joe Biden to do pretty well here, leading the pack at 43%. So you could get a situation where Joe Biden actually loses Iowa, New Hampshire, and Nevada, and I'd actually probably put my money on that at this point in time. The polls have been trending in a way where it feels like either Warren or Sanders could possibly win Iowa and New Hampshire, and then maybe Sanders winning Nevada. So you could get a point where the perceived frontrunner, Joe Biden, well, at this point, you'd probably say co-frontrunner along with Elizabeth Warren, could end up losing the first three states, and that could really hurt his campaign's chances. There's just going to be this aura around the results that's happening that could make it so the primaries and caucuses that we get after those first three states might not be quite as strong for Joe Biden based on those early results, but we'll see if that is the case or not, certainly in a state like South Carolina where you'd expect him to do pretty well. So he's again here at 43% in first place, followed by Warren and Sanders, who are at 18 and 16 percentage points respectively. So those are the three early state results that I wanted to go over, along with those three national polls, and I'll link all of these different polls down in the description if you want to check them out for yourself. We're heading into that debate tonight. We'll see who has positive or negative moments and how that potentially affects how the polls go over the next coming week. So thanks, guys, for stopping on in. Consider subscribing to my YouTube channel, and I hope to see you guys back here for my next video.